You know that feeling. You're trying to get better at listening to English, maybe watching a movie or something, and it just feels like your brain's drowning in sound.
Oh, definitely. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, and there's just so much information out there about language learning, especially listening. It can feel, well, really overwhelming trying to figure out what actually works.
It's incredibly common. I mean, spoken language moves fast, right? People use contractions, words blend together. It's not like reading. Mastering listening, it really can feel like trying to catch a fastball sometimes.
Right, exactly. And you wonder, is there something simple, maybe something kind of obvious that could actually make a huge difference?
Mhm.
That's exactly what we're digging into today. This deep dive is all about subtitles, how they can be, well, way more than just a reading aid, how they can actually become a genuinely powerful tool for improving your English listening skills.
Yeah, we've gone through sources that really break down not just if you should use subtitles, but how to use them strategically. It's really about moving beyond just like passively watching and turning that screen time into targeted, effective learning.
Our goal here is to pull out the absolute core insights from these materials, give you clear, actionable strategies, straight from the sources, really, to help you navigate that listening challenge and level up. Let's dive in.
Okay, so to start, let's unpack this a bit. The sources make a really strong case that listening isn't just one skill among many.
Right.
They position it as truly foundational. Why is that?
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? Intuitively,
Yeah.
language is built on communication, and like the sources point out, over half of that communication, maybe even more, is listening.
Yeah.
If you can't understand what's being said, you can't really respond or engage properly.
Yeah.
You're not in the conversation.
Exactly. It's the main way we get input. And what's fascinating here, I think, is how strong listening skills naturally feed into other areas.
How so?
Well, the sources highlight that as your comprehension gets better, you also start picking up on pronunciation patterns, naturally absorbing new vocabulary and context,
Oh, wow.
and even internalizing grammar structures just by hearing them used over and over.
It's like if you listen well, the rest starts to fall into place more easily.
That's the idea. They use the analogy of how we learned our first language as babies, spending months, maybe years just soaking in sound,
Listening.
just listening long before forming complex sentences. It was the absolute first step.
And yet it feels like many English learners, based on what we read, might kind of skip over this
Yeah.
or underestimate it.
I think so. They might get really focused on, say, grammar rules or reading complex texts,
Right.
or they fall into what the sources call passive listening.
Which I think is super common, having a video or podcast on in the background while you're doing something else.
Totally.
You're exposed to English sound, sure, but are you really listening? The sources suggest, well, probably not in a way that leads to big improvements.
Right. The brain isn't actively engaged in processing the meaning. Not really.
So here's where it gets really interesting. Given all that, how do subtitles fit in? Are they like a genuine help or do they just become a crutch?
Well, the sources are pretty clear that they can be incredibly helpful. The key, though, is how you use them. Subtitles are simply, the text version of the dialogue on screen.
Okay. And the material breaks it down into three main approaches learners often use, right?
Yeah. First, there's using subtitles in your native language, so English audio, but the text is in, say, Spanish or French or Hindi, whatever your first language is.
I know.
Then you have English audio with English subtitles, sound and text, both in English.
Okay, the target language for both.
Exactly. And finally, the pure listening challenge. English audio with no subtitles at all.
Right, so which is best?
Well, the sources weigh these. For absolute beginners, native language subtitles can be useful, just to help you follow the basic plot and not get totally lost and discouraged.
Keeps you engaged.
Right, staying engaged is important. However, and this is a critical point from the sources, they won't do much to improve your English listening skill itself.
And that makes total sense when you think about it. Your brain is it's processing the info through your first language.
Exactly. You're reading the translation, not really training your ear to connect the English sounds to meaning.
You're not making that connection.
No. The sweet spot that the sources strongly recommend, especially for non-beginners looking to really improve listening, is using English subtitles with English audio.
Okay. Why is that the sweet spot?
Because when you see the written word while you hear it spoken, your brain starts making these direct connections. Sound, spelling, meaning all linked together.
Ah, okay.
This is incredibly powerful for comprehension, for building vocabulary, and for linking how words actually sound to how they're written.
That connection feels key. It's like you're getting the audio information reinforced visually, but in English.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You're building those crucial pathways in your brain.
Okay, so we know English subtitles with English audio.
Hmm.
That's generally the way to go for real listening improvement. But it sounds like it's easy to get it wrong, too.
Definitely.
The sources highlight some really common pitfalls people fall into, even when they're trying to use subtitles well.
They do. They list 5 key mistakes. The first one is probably the most obvious, depending on the subtitles too much.
Just reading.
Yeah. You end up just reading the text line by line and not actually focusing your attention on the audio. You basically become a reader, not an active listener.
Which completely defeats the purpose of the whole exercise.
Yeah.
Might as well just read a book.
Exactly. Mistake number 2 is sticking with those native language subtitles for too long. Like we said, they might help at the very, very start.
Right.
But if you never make the switch to English only, you just won't train your listening ear effectively.
You got to cut the cord eventually.
You do. Mistake number 3 is choosing content that's way too difficult for your level.
Oh, yeah. Frustrating.
Totally. If the language is too fast, too complex, full of slang or technical terms you don't know, you'll just spend all your time pausing or feel completely overwhelmed. And then you lose motivation.
Yeah, that's a fast track to giving up. You need to feel challenged, sure, but not, like, crushed.
Precisely. Mistake number 4 is never rewatching content. Language learning thrives on repetition.
Right.
Watching something once, even with subtitles, it's often just not enough for new language patterns or vocabulary or sounds to really sink in and stick.
Your brain needs multiple exposures to truly internalize it, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And the 5th common mistake mentioned is not taking notes.
Letting good words fly by.
Exactly. When you come across new vocabulary or a useful phrase or maybe an idiom while watching, just letting it pass you by is a huge missed opportunity. The sources really stress the importance of capturing that new language.
So actually writing it down somewhere, like a notebook or an app.
Yes, exactly. Jotting it down in a notebook, maybe using a flashcard app later. That active step of writing reinforces the learning and gives you material to review later on.
Okay, so we know why listening is important, which subtitles are best for improvement English only, basically, and the common mistakes to avoid. But how do you put this into a structured, effective practice routine? The sources don't just say, use subs, right? They propose a really concrete method.
Yes, they do. They lay out a system they call the 3-pass method. It's designed to leverage subtitles effectively across multiple viewings of the same content.
The 3-pass method. Okay, tell us about pass 1. What happens there?
Pass 1 is really about initial comprehension and, importantly, enjoyment. You watch the content movie, show clip, whatever, all the way through with English subtitles turned on.
Okay.
The main goal is simply to follow the story, get the main ideas, understand the gist, and just enjoy watching. Don't worry about pausing or taking notes yet. Just absorb.
So first pass is just for fun and getting the basic story down.
Exactly. Get comfortable with the material, the plot, the characters. Then comes pass 2.
Okay.
You watch the same content again, still with English subtitles on. This time, it's the active study pass. Now, you pause and rewind whenever you miss something or hear a new word or an interesting phrase.
This is the note-taking time.
This is where you should have your notebook ready, yes. Jot down that new language, maybe look things up quickly if you need to.
Okay, so the second time is your detailed breakdown and vocabulary capture. What about pass 3?
Pass 3 is the test run, essentially. You watch the same content one last time, but this time, turn the subtitles O off F completely.
The challenge.
Yes. See how much you understand purely through listening now after the first 2 passes. This pass reinforces what you learned and hopefully helps you really see your progress.
That structure is brilliant. It takes the pressure off the first time, lets you study strategically the second time, and then challenges your ear the third time.
Right.
And you can apply this to pretty much any video content, right? Movies, TV series, YouTube clips.
Absolutely. The sources mention its versatility across different types of media. It turns what might be casual watching into a much more focused learning exercise.
And to make this feel a bit more concrete, sources share a couple of examples, right? Listener stories that really illustrate how switching approaches made a difference.
They do. There's the story of Priya from India. She was a big fan of the show Friends
Classic.
and watched it regularly using Hindi subtitles. She thought she was improving, following the story, but when she switched to English subtitles, as recommended, she had this aha moment.
What happened?
She realized she'd been missing so many subtle jokes, all the idiomatic expressions, and just the natural flow of the conversation because she was only getting the translated meaning before.
Oh, that makes so much sense. You're getting the plot, maybe, but none of the actual linguistic flavor, the nuances.
Precisely. She wasn't really hearing how they were saying things. Then there's Diego from Brazil. He decided to apply this three-pass method to Breaking Bad.
Intense choice.
Yeah. But during his second pass, with the English subtitles on, he would pause specifically when he encountered vocabulary related to the show's themes. Terms like plea deal, meth lab, DEA.
Wow, so even watching a fictional drama like that can teach you really specific, authentic vocabulary if you engage with it actively.
It really highlights that the what you watch matters, of course, but maybe the how you watch it matters even more for learning. And speaking of what to watch, the sources give some guidance on choosing content based on your level, too.
Right. Because jumping into something too fast or complex can be demotivating, as we said.
Exactly. For beginners, they recommend very slow, clear English. Content specifically designed for learners is great, or even children's shows like Peppa Pig or Dora the Explorer.
Simple language, strong visuals.
Right, the visuals provide really strong context. Then for intermediate learners, you can move to shows with more natural conversation, but still relatively easy to follow the plot without struggling too much.
Like what?
They suggest sitcoms like Friends, The Office, or Modern Family as good examples. The conversations are more natural, but often the situations are, fairly contained.
Gotcha. And advanced.
Well, if you're advanced, you have a lot more freedom. You can tackle pretty much anything that genuinely interests you. TED Talks, documentaries, news broadcasts, complex dramas, podcasts.
Whatever floats your boat.
Exactly. And a fantastic, really accessible resource mentioned is YouTube. Loads of channels specifically teach English.
Yeah, tons.
And many creators just automatically include good quality subtitles, often available via that CC button. Finding content you actually want to watch is so key to making this sustainable.
Absolutely. If you're not interested, you won't stick with it.
Motivation is huge, definitely.
Okay, let's zoom out for a sec. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, what's actually happening in your brain when you're combining listening with reading the English subtitles at the same time? It feels powerful, but why? From like a learning perspective.
It's like you're hitting your brain from two directions at once, right? Giving it more data points.
Yeah, something like that.
You are. What's fascinating here is that the sources point to this as a form of multisensory learning. You're engaging your auditory sense, the listening part, your visual sense from the video itself, and the visual processing of text when reading the subtitles.
Okay.
This simultaneous input, hitting multiple senses, seems to really strengthen the neural connections for that language information.
So seeing the word right as you hear it helps your brain kind of lock onto it better, make it stick.
Exactly. It makes it significantly easier to remember new vocabulary, to notice how grammar is actually used in real speech, not just in a textbook, and even to start distinguishing different sounds within accents better.
Interesting.
The sources also emphasize that this combination is particularly helpful for recognizing word boundaries.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. Spoken English can just run words together so much.
It really can. Think about a phrase like, "What do you want to do?" In fast, natural speech, it often just sounds like one blob. What do you want to do?
Totally different. Your ear hears one long sound, maybe, but your brain needs to know those are actually 5 distinct words.
Right. Subtitles provide that essential map. They show you visually where one word ends and the next begins, even when the sounds are all mushed together in speech.
Okay.
The sources describe subtitles as a kind of bridge. Initially, you might really need that bridge to connect the sound you hear to the written word. But as your listening improves...
You rely on it less.
Exactly. You start recognizing those blended sounds directly, and you won't need to lean on the bridge quite as much.
It's like a great way to think about it. It's like a temporary tool, scaffolding, to build that core understanding.
Exactly that. Scaffolding is a good word for it.
This all sounds really effective, but let's be honest, it could start to feel a bit like like a chore, or just more homework? This raises an important question. How can you make this active and, genuinely fun? Keep the motivation up.
That's a great point. The sources suggest incorporating some creative challenges and activities, ways to kind of gamify the practice.
Oh, cool. Like what?
Okay, one idea they call challenge number one: watch a short clip, maybe a minute or two, with English subtitles. Then watch it again, but turn the sound off completely.
No sound.
No sound. Your task is to try and actually say the dialogue yourself out loud based on the visuals and what you remember seeing in the subtitles and hearing the first time.
Oh, that forces you to actively recall and produce the language,
Yeah.
not just passively understand it. I like that.
It pushes you beyond just input, yeah. Challenge number two is kind of flipping the standard approach. Try watching a video without any subtitles first. Just rely on your ears, see how much you can understand.
Like a baseline test.
Exactly. Then watch it again with the English subtitles on to check your comprehension, fill in the gaps, see what you missed.
That's a fantastic way to assess your starting point and then see tangible improvement right away on the second pass. Very motivating.
It can be. And challenge number three is really creative. Become a subtitle writer yourself.
How does that work?
You watch a short segment of video, pause it after each sentence or maybe each short phrase, and try writing down exactly what you hear, word for word. Then compare your written version to the actual subtitles provided.
Wow, that would really train your ear to pick out specific sounds and words within the fast flow of speech. These are great ideas. They make listening practice feel much less like work and more like, an active puzzle or game.
They absolutely shift it from passive reception to active participation. That's the goal.
So just out of curiosity, what do the actual language learning experts say about this whole strategy? Combining listening and subtitles.
Yeah.
Do the sources reference any key figures or theories?
They do. A central idea that comes up relates to Stephen Krashen, who's a prominent linguist. His famous concept is that we acquire language by understanding messages. Comprehensible input.
Right, I've heard that.
The sources use this to really underline the importance of subtitles. If you don't understand what you're listening to, if the message isn't comprehensible, you're not really acquiring language from it effectively.
So subtitles are a tool to make the message comprehensible, to unlock the input.
Precisely. They are a tool for achieving that comprehensible input, especially when the audio alone might be too difficult. The sources also touch on ideas from people like A.J. Hoagie, who emphasizes that input is king.
Meaning you need lots of it.
Yeah, you need massive amounts of natural language input to become fluent. Listening provides that input, and subtitles help ensure that input is clear and understandable enough for your brain to actually process and absorb the patterns, the vocabulary, the grammar, the pronunciation automatically over time.
So it's about hearing the rules and patterns in action, repeatedly in real context, rather than just studying them abstractly on a page.
Exactly right. Subtitles help bridge that gap between, say, a grammar rule in a book and seeing and hearing how it's actually used naturally in spoken language.
Okay, this has been a really practical deep dive. I feel like I've learned a lot. Let's quickly recap the core strategies and insights the sources provide for using subtitles to really boost your English listening.
Okay. First, and maybe most important, use English subtitles, not your native language ones, if your goal is genuine listening improvement.
Got it. English subs for English audio. Then adopt the 3-pass method. First pass for fun and gist with English subs.
Second pass for detailed study and note-taking, still with English subs.
And the third pass is the test no subtitles at all.
Right. Also, select content that actually matches your current level and, crucially, that you are genuinely interested in watching.
Keep that motivation up.
Definitely. And make sure you're actively learning. Take notes on new language. Leverage the power of repetition by rewatching things.
Don't just watch once.
Bruh.
And turn practice into play by trying those fun challenges and activities we talked about, like shadowing or subtitle writing.
And maybe the final piece of advice is just be patient with yourself. Improving listening is a skill. It takes consistent practice over time, but applying these strategies should really help accelerate your progress.
Applying these insights from the sources can genuinely transform your approach to English listening, turning your everyday watching habits, movies, shows, YouTube videos, into genuinely powerful learning opportunities. It's about being strategic.
Absolutely. And here's a final provocative thought for you to consider as we wrap up this deep dive. If, as the experts like Krashen suggest, understanding the message is the single most crucial factor for language acquisition, how much faster could your progress actually be if you committed starting now, to using tools like English subtitles strategically to make sure you truly understand everything you listen to.
Really makes you think. Something to definitely mull over. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Keep listening, keep learning.